avoid potential problems from the past.
Got it.
All right. I'm so excited, everybody. This is the first time I've recorded in a while after some serious technical issues. And I am here with a great guest, Evan Stern, who is the host of the Vanishing Postcards podcast, which I am tremendously envious of because of the fact that its production value is amazing. He gets to travel while doing it. He gets to really just kind of write this amazing love letter to the place that he's from, while also having a really diverse and realistic viewpoint on how it is. So Evan, what gave you this idea? Like, I mean, it seems kind of obvious, but like, what about this made this seem like such a passion project and mission for you?
Well, it's been an interesting evolution. Basically, I'm really one of those people who just kind of fell in love with podcasting and audio storytelling over the last 10 years.
Right.
It's not like I had this grand eureka moment, but really what it was is, just listening to podcasts while I'm cooking or doing chores around the apartment. I just kind of started hearing these whispers. Well, maybe there's something that you could do. And it was around this time as well that the YouTube algorithm kept suggesting like these travel vlog videos, and I would never really see. I never really saw the way that I like to travel represented in so many of them. It's certainly not the case with all, but I find in a great deal, it's always much more about look at me and how cute I am in this place, as opposed to, well, let me show you this place.
Right.
And so I come from an acting background. I live in New York. I've been totally enmeshed in the gig economy for a long time, which has its pluses and minuses. But basically, for a long time, I built my life so that I could escape New York for a bit in like January, February when it's cold. And so in January of 2020, I decided to go back to my home state of Texas just to see what I could do. I was going to gather a few oral histories. I didn't really have any clue what I was doing, but there were a few places that I went to where I talked to people, I gathered some stories, I put together a few episodes out of that, and I kind of sat back, I took a look at what I had, and basically I realized that everything I put together, each episode provided a snapshot of a different place. What is that? That's a postcard. And if there's a common thread I noticed in the places that I was visiting, it's that you didn't know how much longer a lot of them were going to be around, or they were representative of broader cultures, histories, traditions that you just don't hear so much about anymore. And so the project became Vanishing Postcards. And since then, it's been an incredible journey that I've had with it. The first season was entirely dedicated. It took place in Texas. Basically, in many ways, the circumstances of the pandemic actually conspired for me to do it. As I mentioned, I did the first 6 episodes, January of 2020, go back to New York. I leave town on March 8th of 2020 for what's supposed to be a 10-day family vacation in Mexico, that then becomes an extended detour in Texas that went on for over a year. But the silver lining is that during that time, I was able to do this. And since it launched officially in April of 2021, it was named one of the best podcasts of 2021 by Digital Trends magazine. It's been nominated for a number of awards. And so I've continued with it as a leap of faith. And I'm busy at work right now on season 2. I've expanded the map beyond Texas, and I just finished driving Route 66 from Oklahoma to California, visiting places, talking to people along the way.
I was going to say, I know you had an episode that spent some time in Oklahoma in season 1, I think, didn't you?
No, not yet, yet. But Oklahoma will definitely be well represented in season 2, as will New Mexico, Arizona, California, and the Texas Panhandle. Texas is along Route 66 as well. So my Texas listeners will be glad about that.
Well, and it almost sounds like, you're kind of doing the old Mexico tour, like the whole part of the U.S. that used to be part of Mexico, like that, like that whole idea. And that really is kind of a panhandle. And what I like about what you do with it is that you don't necessarily provide, I mean, you do provide some commentary on it, but you don't do it in a way where it's like you are telling the story of these places. You let these places speak for themselves in a way that I think is so beautiful, and in a way where it's not like, there really isn't an agenda to what you're doing other than I want people to understand these places as they tell their story. And the way you put it together is also in a way where whenever there do seem stories that seem somewhat dichotomous, you put it in a way where each person who's telling the somewhat dichotomous story, kind of tells their story in a way, and it's like, yes, it's a yes and type of thing, and we don't see a lot of that nuance in a lot of the ways that people approach talking about travel and places. It's like you said, the whole it's selfie travel.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yes. You could say it is kind of a protest against Instagram tourism in a lot of that regard. I thank you very much for your kind words. Basically, and I always am. Sometimes, I have to hold myself back when I feel the urge to comment. But I find that anytime
you and me both.
anytime I feel the urge to comment, I always have to take a step back and remind myself that that's really not what this is about.
Right.
And I do think as well that, I mean, you kind of talk about dichotomy and a lot of the stuff. I do think the show itself is apolitical, which is very important.
Right.
I don't believe that anything that we have gone through over the last 6 years should be normalized in the least. I'm very adamant about that. But I do think that one of the rare areas of agreement in our world right now is culture. And I think that this show really is a celebration of that. It is
what
a celebration
aspect of culture? What aspect of culture specifically do you mean? Or do you mean just culture in the broader sense?
Well, I mean, we might not agree on anything, but we can both agree on Dolly Parton. We both like Breaking Bad. We both enjoy a good meal. We all like Willie Nelson. I mean, that's kind of what, and I think as well that, if we can't appreciate what is good and beautiful about our small towns and rural communities, how can we expect them to appreciate what is good and beautiful about places like New York City or Philadelphia or San Francisco or who knows?
Right. And you visited a lot of places. You visited places that were like kind of dive bars. You visited, I think, even more Hispanic communities. You visited, like, I think you might have even visited a Native American reservation, if I'm not mistaken.
That'll be going on. That'll be going on next season. But
that'll be next season.
But yes, I am. I visited the Rio Grande Valley. It was very important for me to go down there because often what is lost in so much of the noise covering our border is that there are actually people who live there, and there's an incredible, beautiful, vibrant culture that deserves to be celebrated. And it really is, I think border culture in many ways is as quintessentially American as it gets. So I did a piece on conjunto music, but conjunto music,
that's what it was.
If you're unfamiliar with it, basically what it was in Texas, the Mexican laborers heard the polkas that were brought to Texas from the Germans and the Czechs, and they took those same melodies and rhythms and they put Spanish lyrics to them. And so I really do think it's an art form that descends borders is what you'll find there.
And I think that may have been
transcends. Oh my God, I just said descends. What the hell?
Yes. Well, no, but that kind of in a way, like in a weird way made sense as well. Like in a different way. Because that didn't seem pejorative or derogatory at all. It seemed like almost like you were saying it it dissipates the borders between them, you know, that's kind of how I took it when you said descends, but transcends works too. But yeah, I think the conjunto episode might have been my favorite episode for that reason, because it was like we put so many things in these boxes. Is it this or is it that? And this was just an episode where it was like it was the epitome of fusion, you know, and I love that. And even if, especially if you listen, and I'm very much an appreciator of music. I have somewhat of a musical background. I got a guitar for Christmas. And you know, it's and you know, I've dabbled in music production here and there and all this stuff, just a lot of dabbling, other than like my years of high school marching band. It's mostly been a lot of dabbling, but you know, I'm trying to get more into it. Anyway, I'm making the mistake that you talked about earlier about me jumping in, but one of the point that I'm trying to make here is that one thing that you learn when you talk to more musicians and things like that is that they don't really have this divergent, you know, boxes for genres that they appreciate all of it. You know, it's very, like, when you look at musicians in the public eye, they'll have these very diverse tastes in music, and it's because they draw influences from all of it. And like, I thought that was such a beautiful thing, not just musically, but it also it made a broader representation of just these little tiny discrepancies that we make. Really, like, how important are they? I mean, they're important in terms of our identity, but in terms, when it comes to, you know, like, what's important to us in our history, but when it comes to divisions that we create out of them, how important are they really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I thank you very much for the kind words.
So you said you have a background in acting and theater, I think you mentioned. Could you talk a little bit more about that, and has that influenced in any way some of the work you do now? And how did you originally get into that?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think I got probably caught with the acting bug at birth, pretty much. And so, yes, I studied drama in college. I went to Sarah Lawrence, which is outside of New York. I did my junior year abroad at a conservatory in London. Over the years, I've been very privileged to do a lot of fun work regionally. And after coming to New York, I ended up getting a lot of work in the concert and cabaret worlds. I very shortly after moving to town, I realized that
that makes so much sense.
Yeah, no doors were going to open for me. I realized I had to do something on my own. I did not have the time, patience, or energy to put together a proper one-man show, because to write something that I myself would be interested in sitting through was going to take some time. But I realized, I said, well, you know, I can sing, and you know, songs, there's story there's history. And so the first thing I did was I put together a show that focused on the songs of the World War II era.
Wow.
You know, I kind of told the story of World War II and singing the songs. And I was very fortunate to get some good press, met a lot of great people through that. Since then, I've performed as a soloist at Carnegie Hall. I performed a solo show at Lincoln Center. And, you know, I've had the great privilege of performing at any number of venues. But I think in many ways, that work unquestionably prepared me for what I'm doing right now.
Sure, plug that, please. What is that? What's the name of that?
Well, so when I put together a cabaret program, I learned in developing those shows about architecture. Even with something like that, you need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Right.
And what is said in between the songs is every bit as important as the songs themselves. It informs it, and it creates a journey for the audience.
The setup.
Yeah, and I really think in many ways I'm applying that same structure to what I'm doing with this show. You know, it's just instead of songs, they're clips of people's stories and observations. And I just basically take a look at what I have and I weave it together in a cohesive whole that does have a beginning, middle, and an end that can take people on a little bit of a journey.